Policies which target the poor are poor policies. When we have welfare measures that target poor people, what that does is it stigmatizes being poor. Everyone else starts to hate them because they're getting money that's coming out of our pocket. If we have a welfare state that protects everybody, you know, if we had something like a basic income would be far better, because a basic income would give money to everybody in a society, not just those who need it, you know, but everybody, you know. So we voted for a government, they came to power and they did what they did, right? Now, first of all, even with that situation, right, it's still very dictatorial, because, for example, backbench MPs, when they can't do anything. They're pretty much, you know, the backbenches are just a parking place for older retiring MPs and then possible up and coming MPs.
With a minority government,
they can't actually do anything.
Actually have the whip hand.
Yeah, but even Andrew Marr said, right? Even Andrew Marr said, backbenches.
So they have lots of power.
First of all, you're ignoring the role of the chief whip and basically forcing backbenches to vote a certain way, right?
That only works in the majority government. It doesn't work in the minority government. The minority government, the backbenchers can just
second of all, you're ignoring.
We're going to vote against the government and bring it back.
Sorry?
With the minority government, the backbenchers can say we're ignoring you, the whip, and we're going to vote against the government and bring it down by making it unworkable. So with the majority government, you can have a whip who has a whip hand. With the minority government, you can't, because they don't get things through. You know what I mean? If you had 50 seats to spare and there were 5 dissenters, the whip could say, you vote or you're gone, right? And he's got some power. With the minority government, not only does she have to get all the backbenchers to support her, but she also has to get the DUPs and the the 10 Conservatives.
Sadly, in this case, a party which is opposed to most mainstream values that we have. You know, they against abortion, they want to teach creation in schools. So, really, how democratic is it, really, if that's the hinge?
It's just a phase. It's just a part of our passage through history. It's only going to be for a period of time. Government may fall at some stage.
I think it affects our lives, you know. I'm not one of these people that thinks all parties are the same. It doesn't matter who you vote for. You know, I do think there are differences between the parties, and you know, I personally don't want to have a party in power that believes that we should teach that the world is 5,000 years old, 10,000 years old. Sorry?
I don't think you realise just how unpopular left-wing ideology is in the whole world.
How can you say that? How can you say that?
I don't think some people realise it. I know people are becoming more conservative, even the young people.
What are you basing that on?
I'm an example of someone who has no problem calling himself left-wing.
No, I'm not saying that.
You know, I don't think I'm that strange.
It's not popular. Background is what's there,
The last election in this country. Why aren't you answering me?
I think, you know, at the end of the day, most people identify with left-wing values, I think, at the end of the day.
That's different.
I don't want to sound too presumptuous.
You said unpopular.
But by left-wing, you mean people that care about minorities, they, you know, care about equality. They want to progress society forward. I think most people want that, right?
Investing.
Equality before the law. Being egalitarian. I think most people like equality. You know, they like the basic level of equality.
They're not talking about equality.
Should we talk about Corbyn?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
Massive fan, but I'm a bit worried about one of the.
We knew the bus was coming.
The Labour Party manifesto. In the Labour Party manifesto, they talk about how we shouldn't sell weapons as a country to nations that might use them to attack civilians. That's a very, very vague and ambiguous policy. Really, it should be we blacklist countries that have a bad human rights.
To say it's unpopular.
Right? It should be we blacklist Indonesia, make sure that Saudi Arabia is, you know, just stop selling weapons, basically. That I think would be much better. But sadly, Jeremy Corbyn is not going to. I don't think he's going to bring that. Also, Jeremy Corbyn has no problem with nuclear weapons as well, and I'm massively opposed to using it. So
we can move forward.
The Labour Party manifesto.
It's not in the manifesto.
Yeah, it's not in the manifesto.
But Jeremy Corbyn is against it.
Yeah, I know, but now he's not opposed to keeping it in the manifesto.
He's just trying to satisfy his back. You haven't. That's not what I wanted to hear.
You know that.
What did you want to hear?
He doesn't know that.
Yeah, I hope he wins the next election. I still hope he wins.
That's it. That's what I wanted to hear.
I'm not here to tell you how to vote. I'm here to discuss democracy as an idea.
Let's say the left
Corbyn got into power, we'd be better off.
Sorry?
I think if Jeremy Corbyn got into power, we'd be better off.
Oh yeah, I think that society would be far better. Yeah. Yeah, I believe that for sure.
Do you think he's got any sense at all? Even in his dress wear.
Even in his what? Sorry.
You
This is very interesting. A lot of people talk about politicians as if they're like, they talk about the personalities of them more than the actual policies. Very often speakers corner. It's a bit of a worry.
You think they should bring up the corporation?
And in America as well, you have people deciding who they're going to.
And he doesn't have any policy.
You have people deciding who they're going to vote for in America based on who they rather have a barbecue with, kind of thing, right? And it's very. What has that got actually to do with,
Exactly.
with politics? I mean, it's like they're private individuals. They have a private life that is irrelevant to us.
Don't judge people on dresses and dresses.
Do you think they should raise corporation tax in the UK?
I think they should raise corporation
Even though last year,
tax.
once they reduced corporation tax, the corporation tax revenue went up.
I think they should increase corporation tax. Yeah, I believe that.
What if I told you I thought that they should have no corporation tax at all?
No corporation tax at all. Well, you know what? Like, if you want to have a functioning welfare state, right, there needs to be some level of progressive taxation, and I think that's regressive. Personally, that's just my opinion.
Can I explain my logic?
Please go ahead. You can welcome to get up here if you want.
You'll do the right job.
Every company is either owned by individuals or by another company. And ultimately, every company is owned by individuals.
It's owned by individuals.
Yeah. The share capital in the company is owned by individuals. Okay? So you can have a company that's owned by another company, but ultimately, the ultimate parent is owned by individuals. The only way they get money out of the company is either through liquidating the company or paying dividends.
Asset stripping.
Yeah, okay, that's liquidating the company.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you tax people on what they withdraw from the company, then you get taxed every time. Okay? Because if the five of us here each contributed £100,000 into the company, so £500,000 is trading, we don't get a penny back until it pays dividends. Okay? We then, it trades, it makes a profit, and it pays dividends to us. We pay income tax on those dividends. Tax is gathered in that way. Okay? Why tax it? Why tax the company? What's the point? Because ultimately it's people who own the company, and therefore if you focus on the individual, you can't have anything, right? So what happened is, along the way, somebody said, let's have a little short-term tax here to do something, right? Because we can't get enough from direct voters. Let's indirectly tax them. We'll tax the companies, right? And what happens then is, the company will pay dividends that year, but in a couple of years' time it has less money because it's paid out corporation tax. So the dividends are shrunk then. And by the way, those dividends are what go to make up the insurance amounts that are there for insurance companies, pensions, things like that. They own all the big companies, okay? So they have a smaller pot coming in. So what they did was they deferred taking the tax from direct individuals by doing it indirectly. And that grew and grew and grew to the mess we have today.
I prefer direct taxes, yeah. I would prefer them myself.
So what I'm saying is that the mess that they have in corporate tax structure today is all because of the fact that they don't sit back and look at the bigger picture and say, well, hang on a second, ultimately every company is concerned about it.
Yeah, I know, it's easy to forget this world of collective entrepreneurship, but there's literally thousands and thousands of people involved in the company now. They are at the end of the day owned by individuals. That we should be taxing those individuals more than the company. I know, but we should maybe tax them more. Is what I'm proposing.
What I'm saying is, if you got rid of corporation tax, they'd have higher income, and they'd be paying income tax on the dividends they were getting anyway.
You know what? Should we talk about the welfare state more generally? I support a strong welfare state because it's like bankruptcy law, right?
That's very weak.
It's a very similar. Right now we have when a company goes bankrupt, it's protected, right? Back in the olden days, you might go to debtor's prison, or you might be paying debts for the rest of your life if your company went bankrupt, right? But the government intervened and it created limited liability companies, so that you had limited liability that you could get back on your feet very quickly afterwards. We need that for workers. We need that for the majority of people in the society, not just a few to pay corporation tax, but we need that for everybody. A strong welfare state is like bankruptcy law. It enables people to be a bit more confident that, okay, if I get fired, if I lose my job, then maybe I can, if I lose my job, then maybe I can actually get back on my feet, I can train, I can, you know.
Incentivizing people doing nothing. Exactly,
yeah. Well, right now, what we have is we have a welfare state that targets the poor. And like Alfred Marshall, the famous British economist, said, what did he say? He said, policies which target the poor are poor policies. When we have welfare measures that target poor people, what that does is it stigmatizes being poor. Everyone else starts to hate them because they're getting money that's coming out of our pocket. If we have a welfare state that protects everybody, you know, if we had something like a basic income, A basic income would be far better because a basic income would give money to everybody in a society, not just those who need it. You know, but everybody. You know. Well, you know what? Amazing. You know, it's never been. You said it's never been like that. But you know what? Richard Nixon got very close to introducing a basic income. You were very close to introducing a measure that would give everybody in the United States a fixed monthly allowance, right, regardless of whether they were working or not, as a replacement to traditional Social Security. You're just going to give everybody blanket sum. They did some studies in the United States and Canada, and they found out that people, when they're actually just given free money, and they're not made to, you know, work for it, or, you know, they're not made to try and find a job in order to get it. And they're just given the money. They actually often, they become healthier. The children have better educational scores. They're more likely to start a business and start becoming entrepreneurial. Basically, it's like the Swedish Social Democratic Party said: secure people dare. Just like we have limited liability for companies that protects them.
When did that happen?
What states did that happen in?
What dates?
How big was
It was during Richard Nixon's. It was during Richard.
It
was during Richard Nixon's administration. It was roughly, as far as I believe, it was 2,000 people that they did the study on.
2,000 people, very small population.
They found in the study that, well,
what was the social standing or social class that these 2,000 people came from?
The whole point is that it didn't target poor people. It didn't target a particular group of people.
Was it in a particular geographic area? Because you did some.
No, it was all. It was from about.
In California.
It was from about 6 or 7 different states. It had like from Kentucky, North Carolina. It was a range of states. And you know what? Do you know the main reason it didn't pass in the Senate was because one of the researchers who was doing the study, they botched one of the results. They found out that apparently divorces went up by 50%, right? When everyone was given this basic income in the studies. And then that led the very conservative Senate to think, oh my God, no, we can't have, if this gives women more control, right, over their lives and gives them more freedom to divorce, then we can't allow that. It turned out that actually 50% was a mistake. Divorce barely changed, hardly changed at all.
I would suggest to you that if you're suggesting that in America they would take a sample of 2,000 people, run it for some period of time, and come up with a conclusion on which to base any policy, you're mad. Because there's no way they do it. Because the sample size, talk to any statistician, he'll tell you that sample size is tiny.
Well, what about the evidence of other basic income trials? They've done a basic income trial in Dauphine in Canada. That was about 5,000 people. They did a study about 30 villages in India. You know, there aren't. I'm not saying we should have a basic income straight away. I'm asking for more pilot trials to see that. Do you know in London, you could call it free money, but actually it's coming out of the taxpayer's purse, so it's not free money.
Everyone else is paying, right?
Can I suggest to you that the biggest
what you're doing is you're ignoring certain things, because if you brought in a basic income, first of all, crime would go down, because most crime is related to people not having enough money, right? Let's just face it, most crime is about people needing money. Crime would come down. Healthcare bills would go down, so the healthcare bills for the NHS would go massively down, because let's face it as well, a lot of
we're fascinating, we become obese. Would the costs go down with that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, obesity is linked to stress. You know, you're more stressed out, you're more likely to become obese.
I lived 30 years in the United States. When they made a lot of surveys, and it's very linked to the schooling. Obesity is higher among people with poor scholarization.
Okay, yeah, it's also to do with inequality. Countries that have a higher gap between rich and poor, they're more likely to be obese. So the United States and Britain, I have 2 family members who suffer from obesity. And I know it's like, you know, everybody knows somebody, you know, who's had health problems related to that, you know. In places like Japan, Sweden, it's much less of a problem basically, because there's less stress in those societies. They have less stress. There's less stress than in the UK. Japanese people suffer from less stress than British people.
How can you measure stress?
I come in at 8 and leave around 8 or 9.
Yeah, they have longer working hours, but they still have as a society they're less stressed out than British people. They suffer from less of what psychologists call psychosocial stress.
Japanese.
Yeah, I know. Sweden also has a high suicide rate. The relationship is interesting.
People commit suicide so they don't count to be stressed anymore.
It's actually interesting. As a society becomes more equal, interpersonal violence goes down, but suicide goes up. So Japan and Sweden, they're more equal than Britain. They're less violent. They have less problems with violence, but they have higher suicide rates, right? Now, this still needs more study. No, but I don't think most psychologists know why this happens. one psychologist came up with this idea that maybe it's to do with the fact that when we stop turning our aggression outwards to people, as we do in unequal societies, we're angry at not having enough compared to the neighbor down the street. You know, we're very angry, especially men get very angry about this. You know, they get very, very, like, men and what? Yeah, because men, having more money matters more to men than it does to women, I think.
No, I think you're being sexist.
No, I'm not being sexist.
You're being sexist.
I'm not being sexist. This is a very honest
as a man, I'm
observation.
very offended.
It's a very honest observation, backed up by the facts.
I mean, you are entitled to say that, I suppose, as a generalisation. Yeah, you're being very
When choosing a partner, men care more about looks, and when women choose a partner with men, they care more about money. Right?
Yes.
It's just a fact. There's been sociology studies of this.
Can I give you one little piece of advice? You may be aware of this already.
It's a truism.
No,
that's not to say that all women are gold diggers and all men are shallow. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that when we're making a decision about marriage partner, men care more about how a woman looks, and women care more about the size of a guy's bank balance. It's just they care more about a guy's financial
You've been
situation.
attacked at Hyde Park Corner and Speaker's Corner very often because you're likely to have a mob of women coming at you in a minute.
Most marriages are based on financial decisions.
No,
I'm saying that to the
Most women marry because
I just said that. I'm not saying that women are gold diggers and men are shallow. What I'm saying is that when it comes to making a decision about choosing a partner, men care more about the woman's looks.
Yeah.
I don't just believe this. Read the spirit level.
So you think most people you're talking nonsense?
Read the
When you talk
spirit
about
level.
marriage, you're talking nonsense.
Read the spirit
No,
level.
you're talking nonsense. You're talking nonsense. What? That you marry because of the way someone looks.
not what I
You
said,
get
though.
married
I
not
just
based
said
on. I look at a young lady and go, oh, generally, my generalisation of getting down the aisle is what she looks like. Generally, that's what the most.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Why back up with generalization
so when-
to go nowhere.
So let me explain to this gentleman.
No,
Men, when they make a decision about choosing a partner, they care more about the woman's physical appearance than about how wealthy she is. Right? To the
Yes,
same
on the
degree, it's
whole,
flipped the other way
yes.
around with men. Women don't mind as much how a guy looks, and they care more about how much money he has. There have been studies have shown that this is right. I just mentioned to you The Spirit Level. It's a fantastic book by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett. You can cycle off if you don't believe me.
Well, like all these studies,
How can anyone be
listen to this.
What do you think it is I'm trying to say? What do you think it is I'm trying to say? What do you think I'm trying to say?
Based on those two things you brought up. Most women is based on money, guys and good looks.
If you were here just now, you were here just now, you would have heard me say that I'm not. By saying that, I'm not saying men are shallow and women are gold diggers. I'm not saying that. There are other aspects that come into the relationship as well. I'm just saying, out of those two things, men can more. It's just. I don't know why it is the way it is, but it is the way it is. I don't know why. I don't particularly care why, to be honest. No, I don't particularly care.
it's true.
I would rather see a society less like a Jane Austen novel where you're marrying for money. I'd rather see a society where people marry because they love the other person. The other person has a beautiful personality.
People don't marry at all.
But now that our society is becoming so... Sorry?
Oh, this one's never been married.
What is?
What you're saying, well, you think generally people get married for money?
I didn't say that though. You see, yeah, you know what, cycle off, because you're not actually listening.
No, here, well done you.
I don't know if it's because he's at the back or if it's... But I made my point very clear.
Remember one thing, all these studies are always done with a precise purpose, divide and rule. Any study is always black against white, women against men, yellow against Indians or whatever. They are all intentionally made to control the idiots. That's what they are the studies about.
No, divide and rule is the basic way to control society. You know.
Divide and rule.
And you know what? The idea of even having men and women, that's a concept. You know, the idea of man and woman as separate from male and female. You know, the idea of gender as opposed to sex. That's a relatively recent idea in British culture. That came around the 1600s. That idea that there was men and women as opposed to just male and female. It's a very.
Could you elaborate on that?
So, for example, the idea that there was set genders, like gender roles, as opposed to just people, human beings who happen to be male or female. You know, that's a relatively new idea in human history, is what I'm trying to say.
So you would argue that there's no such thing as female behavior and male behavior?
Sorry?
So you'd argue that there's no such thing as female behavior and male behavior?
Oh no, of course not. There's a whole branch of psychology. There's a whole branch of psychology devoted to studying, like, you know, like how men behave and how women behave. I understand that.
Any type of creed, ideology, or survey which puts division among people is always right wing, alt-right wing.
You're being quite divisive, I say.
Well, no, it is a fact. Where do you have any communist, Castro, Che Guevara, Stalin, whatever, who put people against people? You don't have it in the Marxist movement. You have some in the anarchist movement. The Marxist movement is absolutely not concerned about what divides people. It's mostly concerned about how to overthrow a system based on exploitation of man by man. That's what is the concern.
This is why I'm neither a Marxist or an anarchist. I'm a communalist, which takes the best elements of both.
Yeah, small government.
So Marxists concern themselves primarily, some would say solely, on economic exploitation in the workplace, how a worker is exploited, and they might ignore other peripheral types of oppression. Anarchists go the other way. They maybe focus more on the oppression of men by women, or women by men, or black people by white people, and so on, right? Now, the thing I love about communalism, it's a philosophy espoused by Murray Bookchin, is that it takes the best of both worlds. Because there are many situations in which women, for example, they're not being economically exploited, but they're being oppressed. Or there might be a situation where there's a black person. Yeah, there's a black person, they're not economically exploited, but they're being socially oppressed. Oppression and exploitation are not the same exact thing. There are many situations where you can be, you know, like for example, I'll give you an example of something very, very, very comparatively small, in my experience, right? Economically, socially, I'm very lucky, right? You know, I'm a white male, middle class, you know, it's quite a high level of privilege our society gives that group, right? But you know, I do occasionally get some very small oppression in the form of ageism. The amount of times I've come up to here at Speaker's Corner, and I've had older people in the crowds telling me, "Oh, what do you know about that? You want to live them? What do you know about that? You know, you're only..." I had some guy telling me 2 weeks ago that I was only 16. What do I know about it? They're only 16. And I'm actually 21, so it's a bit strange to...
Knowledge doesn't know any age.
We wish we were 21 again.
I wish, yeah, I wish
Knowledge doesn't know any age. Knowledge doesn't know any age.
Sorry?
Knowledge does not know any age.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the point I'm making here is that we should challenge all forms of oppression, not just that which takes place in the workplace. Marxists obsess about that particular form of oppression, exploitation in the workplace. But we should look at all forms of oppression.
If the paycheck is low,
see what I'm saying?
You have very few opportunities in life. You
Sorry?
know?
Do you eat meat?
Present
Do I eat
animals.
bees?
Meat.
Bees.
You eat meat.
Bees.
Meat.
Bees, right? Meat.
Meat.
No, I actually try not to eat meat.
on the ball.
Try not to or you
I'm
don't.
what's called a flexitarian. There's another
Flexitarian.
useful word.
Undefensitarian.
Communalist?
Is that undefensitarian?
Communalist or flexitarian?
When last we had McDonald's?
You're an undefensitarian.
Undefensitarian. A flexitarian is someone who eats mainly vegetarian diet, and then occasionally, like for example, if I go out and I spend time with Italians, right? You know about this, right? If I say I'm vegetarian, they're gonna be like, okay, so you want some fish or you want some lamb? They'll be like, they just a lot of them just don't have a concept of vegetarian. So I'll just be like, fine, give me whatever you have. Sometimes, yeah.
You don't think that's exploitation?
Well, as exploitation, yeah. See, this is the thing. At home, I never eat meat because of that reason. But if I go out to a dinner, or I'm like at somebody's house, I'm not gonna just refuse.
You don't want to insult them.
That's I'm very obsequious.
I'm a vegetarian, but
Oh,
also-
I think he's being considerate.
It's also practical as well. So one time I traveled to Mongolia. I went on a trip with some friends, and I spent some time with some people that I spent some time with some shepherd actually and his family, and they drink milk, and they drink horses' milk sometimes. They eat horses, they eat cows, they eat their diet is mainly dairy and meat. And I wasn't gonna just say no to that. I was hungry and at the time I was a vegan and I stopped becoming a vegan after that trip because I realized there are many. Yeah, I was hungry. I need to eat.
Exactly.
When you walk 14 miles, you know what? You gotta eat something.
When there are no fruits or vegetables around.
Sorry?
Isn't there no fruits or vegetables? I'm a vegan as well.
Vegetables are expensive in Mongolia. They are like more. Fish as well is expensive.
No, here as well. You eat vegetables. You need more money than
yeah, we were very
meat.
poor as well.
You need far more money by eating vegetables than because you need to eat a lot of vegetables.
Yes.
With meat, just a little steak, you feel full. Vegetable, try to eat only salad. It takes 5 hours before you feel full.
Yes.
It takes a very long
I have to
time.
confess, all I've eaten today is some biscuits and some plums. I haven't actually eaten any vegetables.
No wonder there's nothing wrong
Yeah,
with you.
exactly.
No, vegetable diet is very expensive.
Can I want to go back to. I want to go back to talking about obesity. One of the reasons obesity is higher in more unequal countries is because those countries are more stressed out, and eating is obviously like the most basic way to comfort yourself, isn't it? You can't sleep at night, you go down to the kitchen, you get something to eat, right? It's the most basic. Some people as well, they get homesick, they miss their parents cooking, and they start to make their parents food. You know, and they start eating that food. Now, we could stop that overeating if we reduce the gap between rich and poor. We reduce the stress that comes with that. You know, the feeling of being ashamed and feeling like you're lower than a whole section of society. You know, you feel like inferior. You can reduce that stress, then maybe we'd see less overeating and see less obesity. Can have a more healthy society as a whole. And it's true, the more. Sorry, you want to. The lady was going to say something behind you.
Are very fat. Animals are fed with hormones.
Were you going to say something?
I was going to say people in Mexico, I think they're overweight because it's really hot.
It's really what?
It's really hot.
It's hot.
It's another reason.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a slower lifestyle.
the study I'm talking about, the study I'm talking about with inequality, it applies to rich countries. Mexico's not, it doesn't come under that. Yeah, basic income. So basic income could be one amazing way to reduce that gap. What is a basic income? Basic income is when you give everybody in a society a fixed monthly payment. Doesn't matter if they're working or not, they just get it for being citizens of that society, right? And it's got no strings attached. So it's not like you have to... Sorry? Well now, let's be analytical here and separate the basic income itself from paying for the basic income. So how do we pay for a basic income? That's another question. Now, I would suggest there are a number of ways to do it. For example, a Tobin tax is one way, so a tax on financial transactions, and that actually might. No. That Tobin tax will slow down financial transactions. That'll slow down financial transactions and actually put some brakes on our economy. Right now, our economy goes too quickly. It's one of the reasons we had. It's one of the reasons we had the 2008 crash as well.
Slowest growing of the G8 at the moment, so you want to slow us down more.
You said everyone enough from Mexico.
Oh, the basic income. I would support pilot studies for basic income in every country. Yeah, doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. For example, there was a really good study done in India called it was called Basic Income, a New Policy for India. It was written by a few researchers in India, and they found out that that villages that received a basic income, they had less crime, they had less problems with drug abuse, less problems with prostitution. More people started businesses, started enterprises. There was higher test scores. The kids did better in school. So and you're talking about taxes, right? I reckon with the basic income, right? If more people had a basic income, more people would exit the informal sector, the black market, and come out into the formal sector where they'd actually start paying taxes. When they'd have that security, they'd be more likely to take jobs in the formal sector, and then that means paying taxes. So
when you say I reckon that, there's no substance behind a statement like that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you talked about some trials that were done. You talked about 5,000 people. There was a classic study done in America in a place called Mayo University. It's called the Hawthorne study. Have you come across it? Okay. What it was to watch workers' behaviour when you changed variables in their environment. So they had these workers there, and they said, you know what? We'll improve the lighting level in this factory. So they improved the lighting level. Productivity went up. They said, you know what? It's interesting. We'll give them a bit more money. Productivity went up. They gave them more time off, productivity went up. They gave them better holidays, productivity went up. Now you could have come to the conclusion after all these things that the better you treat your workers, the more productivity you get. No, stop. Then somebody said, well, hang on a second, let's just test the opposite of this. So they turned the light levels down again. What happened? Productivity went up. They reduced their wage levels, productivity went up. What had happened was behavior was being affected by merely the fact that they were being observed. Okay? So those small samples that you have to have a very big sample over a long period of time. You also have to have placebos where you've got other things saying, well, what if the opposite happened? And none of those have ever been done. So when you talked about this Indian village and this small sample spread across a number of states in America, they're tiny.
I study anthropology at my uni. It's the basic problem of social sciences. Unlike studying frogs or molecules or very simple, relatively simple things, right? That those things can't speak back. They can't, you know. When you're studying people, they can read your studies and then they can behave a different way, right? That's the problem. That's the basic problem of social sciences. And yeah, to get over that problem, you need massive samples. You need studies done over a long number of years, as this man mentions. So what I'm calling for here is, I'm not saying we need a basic income straight away. Like I said before, we need more pilots, more studies to see if it works. We need to move. That's moving towards it, but not moving straight to it. If that makes sense. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying we should go straight to it without properly studying it.
You picked a group of people in Wales, or you picked a group of people in Scotland, or you picked a group of people in Brighton, or in London, or wherever, you're going to have differential factors that will influence how they will behave. The difficulty is to get something broad enough to say, yeah, that works. I can get conclusive evidence from that trial that this works. To do that, it's Utopia.
Utopia for realists, it's called. And you know, Utopia, the word, means two things. It means no place, and it means a good place, right? Now, I agree with Oscar Wilde on this. You know what? Progress is the realization of utopias. Moving forward in society, you always have to have some kind of vision of what you want. My vision personally is of having a very short working week, right, for everyone in society, not just for me, to have a basic income, to come to places like Speaker's Corner and deliberate and make decisions here. Not just talk about ideas, but actually to, you know, elect people to, you know, through face-to-face assemblies. Sorry? Well, you know, that was democracy in ancient Athens. Face-to-face deliberation, right? That's the kind of democracy I want. So that's my vision.
It's called growing intellectually.
That is my vision, yeah. And it involves an intellectual change, you know, it involves changing your way of thinking. Now, just because I have that vision, does that mean I live with my head in the clouds? No, of course not. I try and have my feet on the ground at the same time, you know? Try and think about smaller changes that could happen in the lead up to those bigger changes, right? So for example, one small change that could lead us towards having a basic income would be to recognize certain kinds of work that are not currently recognized. For example, a lot of the work that women happen to do, you know, looking after elderly relatives. Yeah, he's gonna be looking after elderly relatives, child rearing.
Yeah.
Right now, women do a very unfair like percentage of that work, right? They need that kind of work needs recognition.
Well, they're gold diggers, you said, so they deserve it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they get paid for it. As far as that guy on his bike is concerned, I am. Yeah, I don't care what he thinks though. So what was
it's what you said to me. You said, on your bike.
How are they going to make people hurt? I mean, you know, how would they make people in poor countries where it's really hot in the day?
Sorry?
In poorer countries where it's really hot, how would they motivate people to get anything done? Why would you? I mean, I agree with what you're saying.
They can move to cold
It's a good
countries.
idea. I think there's going to be less work in the future. But other things that need to be done by somebody.
I think those poor countries are generally more entrepreneurial than rich countries. I think people living in like India are more entrepreneurial than the average person living here.
And more politicized.
Because they have to survive as well.
Far more politicized.
Their survival
than
depends on being.
Relocation from hot countries to the North Pole. Very cool.
There's business made out of
far more
stuff you can never imagine here.
anti-imperialist than
You can actually
anybody
pay for a spot to beg
That
in
is also
some poor
mental
countries.
one.
You can pay for a spot to beg in. Also, you have people that just invent jobs that aren't really jobs as well. They go up to people and spray their cars and clean their cars, right? You see that in a lot of poor countries. Where I live in Durban, they used to do that. In South Africa, when I was born, people do that. It's not really a real job, but people create that kind of work.
can't do
Now,
much.
I believe that with a basic income in a poor country, poor people would have, I think people living in those societies would be far less stressed out, going back to stress, be less stressed out, they become even more entrepreneurial than they were before. You have more people starting new businesses. Now, like this gentleman's right to point out, we need to actually see if this is borne out by the facts and have more studies and more trials. So right now, I'm not saying we need to move straight to a basic income, I'm just saying we need to have more trials, and as a precursor to that, we need to recognize that there are forms of work which aren't recognized. Like I mentioned, women's work often happens to be unrecognized, you know. That,
Never done.
see, with a basic income, they would be rewarded for that work, right? They'd be actually recognized for that work, which is endless, a lot of it. It is just, it could just go on forever, a lot of that work, right? You know? So, yeah, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, we need a basic income. That's it. I don't have anything else to say.
In the definition